Hey, that's pretty much the plot of the second Aquaman movie, a movie that no one but me has seen, but that's the case.
I hope no one else is doing a bit, but I'm doing a bit.
Daddy's got a pod.
I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's for the perverts.
Join us in our strange ritual.
That is time traveling love smut.
I can only say horny in one season opener.
A medium amount of fun and an extra large amount of sweaty.
From the minds that brought you Giraffe and Amerisaur.
No regrets, no masters.
I got dick jokes to make, man. Leave me alone.
This is good. This is good for anyone.
This one's gonna be weird. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Do you guys want to do a podcast? Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, only because I've been led here with false pretenses of my own making.
Yeah, because we're doing Advance Wars for sure. 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and the fact that I'm wearing my tendinitis gauntlet, which only means one thing. That's right, baby. It's Final Fantasy XIV season. Air guns. Air guns, air guns, air guns.
How is your brain handling
Soup.
Final Fantasy XIV and Elden Ring DLC at the same time? How's that going?
My brain isn't handling it because you want to know something? I haven't downloaded the Elden Ring DLC yet.
Oh, they patched it to be harder, though, so you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what the internet has told me. Yeah, so funny, I actually jumped into Elden Ring like a month and a half ago. I think I said it on a normal episode maybe. And I was like, I just super wasn't feeling it. I'll come back around when like everyone is kind of over it and not talking about it anymore. So give me like, I'll probably be talking about it manically in like 8 months from now.
That's, in my experience, the way to go. Just,
yeah,
especially since everything's streaming, like everything's always available now.
Yeah,
I don't need to be a part of the hype wave. Like, if I see something that makes me think it's worth it, I'll play it when I get to it.
Yeah.
Likely after the hype wave dives down.
Likely after the hype wave. Well, what an incredible segue, because we're going to talk probably most exclusively about the idea of a hype wave today. So on the subject of both hype wave and my impending tendinitis.
Impendinitis.
The two places where those things predator handshake is MMORPGs, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Specifically, the MMORPG titled Guild Wars 2, which is a 12-year-old game, but is still very active and is about to go into its 5th expansion. So special thanks to fellow Guildie and #ButtWompNation member Zach, who commissioned today's episode. And as always, if you would like to commission your own episode and force me to spend more time away from Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, you can do so at patreon.com/debatethiscast.
Hey, I have my first question already. So, question from
going into it. All right.
Question from guy who only plays Overwatch, but now Overwatch 2. Is Guild Wars 2 an Overwatch 2 situation where it's basically just Guild Wars, but the second version, or is it like a different game than Guild Wars?
Honestly, really good question. It is not like Overwatch 2 in that it's the same game, but it is like Overwatch 2 in that it is not a sequel. It's just in the same it's in the same universe.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question. I can vibe with that.
It is also gameplay-wise, I would argue, closer to Overwatch 2 than it isn't.
Huh. Oh, shit.
Oh.
I got Matt.
I'm not going to get into
just
Guild
learned
Wars
about a
2,
new way
but...
to ruin his life.
Yeah, man. Matt is one, much like I am one bad decision. Well, much like I am already on the path to play Warhammer, Matt is one bad decision away from being an MMO guy. But guys, as we all know, adventuring is rarely, if ever, a solo effort. And so I've brought my own holy trinity of tank DPS and support and party members. Let me introduce you to Todd, Jormag, Dragon of Ice and Persuasion Thomas, Matt, Matt Mordromoth, Dragon of Plant and Mind Cole, And Kyle, Kralkatorrik, Dragon of Crystal and Fury Harper.
That's how you pronounce that word.
Yeah,
Kralkatorrik, that's a tough one. Yeah,
there's more consonants in that word than I think there should be.
Yeah, there's a lot of R's in case.
I looked at these and I was like, this is one of the situations where a developer just wrote their name out backwards.
Yeah.
It's not what they did.
Yeah. It's something. It is something. But let's start as we always do. And I know that none of you guys have experience with Guild Wars 2. I played Guild Wars 2 before doing this research. I played it one day. A buddy of mine was like, "Hey, you should try this." And I was like, "Cool. Not going to stop playing FF14, but this is great."
What when was this?
So this probably 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, so
it's been
a while.
You were an adult with a degree and a job by this point.
Correct.
Point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But let's instead, because I want to talk a little bit about MMORPGs as the genre, because we've made a lot of jokes about MMOs, but I don't know that we've ever done like an official deep dive. So why don't you guys instead tell me about your history with MMO, massively multiplayer online games, and then if you have MMORPG experience, that as well.
I'll start because my list is very short, in effect that it's none. I was like, as a kid, super active on like Neopets because that was a thing. And so I think that counts. And then
I would say it counts in the same way that honestly Overwatch counts.
Yeah. And then I was going to say, like, at this point, I think a lot of like first person shooter games really end up in an MMO category. So
they're not RPGs, but definitely like massively multiplayer. Yeah, for sure.
So Overwatch, even like Smash Brothers and Clash of Clans, like I would say the modern definition of an MMO. But as far as quote unquote classic MMO, like pre 2010, exactly nothing.
Yeah, your EverQuests, your Warcrafts, things like that. What about Kyle or Todd? What about you guys?
I have very little experience as well. I played about 6 months of WoW after Cataclysm came out.
Okay.
So when after it was good. And then I've played, I think Hearthstone counts in the way that we're counting other similar
Hearthstone,
other
Magic
things.
Arena. I mean, these are all offsprings of this model for sure.
Yeah, I think the massive part gets iffy on some of those because like those are 2-player games, but I played them. I played like Kingdom of Loathing, which technically is a MMORPG. And I feel like I've dabbled with a couple other like free to plays and just never got the itch, never got the bite that like was like, well, this is my whole personality and only hobby now, some people. But I'm familiar. I've been around them since they've been a thing, but I've never gotten the bite like other people.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm going to have pretty similar answers. I never got super, super into MMORPGs. I mean, I dabbled with Warcraft when it came out, played StarCraft back on what was the next step of dial-up before high speed. When dial-up was like, we should get good so you can actually play some online games.
OG Battle.net?
Yes, OG Battle.net. Most of my online gameplay has always been shooters. Though
you did dabble in Phantasy Star, right?
Did do Phantasy Star. Never actually fully engaged online, even though that was in the title. It was always like couch co-op.
Gotcha.
Man, I wish they made another good version of that. And then Kyle kind of took my big surprise.
I think a good version of it does exist. It's called Xenoblade Chronicles, honestly.
Well, maybe. Yeah. I mean, listen, sure.
That is exactly what
Todd
it is.
will play that after he plays Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, after Andrew watches The Mandalorian.
Absolutely never.
Kyle took my big surprise drop, Kingdom of Loathing. Played a lot of Kingdom of Loathing.
Yeah, I knew I was stealing that one from you.
KOL was a big thing. I was just right at the prime time of high school where we could go to the computer lab and hang out during lunch. And so we'd either play Age of Empires all land together, or we'd play Kingdom of Loathing. I know actually some of our patrons are like super into KOL as well, and there have been games since that. Anyway, that was my big like yeah. I was in clans, I was like doing all the stuff. Like that was my big thing. I never just got the full like World of Warcraft bite though.
Yeah. I'm surprised that none of us, present company included, was a RuneScape guy. Feels like that would have hit at least one of us at some point.
My wife was a RuneScape guy.
Yeah, really?
I was gonna say I knew from college that Todd's wife was a RuneScape guy.
Yes. So plug here. When there was an advertisement for old school RuneScape, which is now a thing you can play,
it is still very much a thing you can. It's very active too.
Yeah.
Every now and again, Shannon will make some remark, and I'm like, you could get back into it.
Yeah. Just dip back in.
I know I touched RuneScape at one point when I was like shotgunning free MMORPGs at the time, and it was another case of like I think it was pre like vanilla came release, so it was mid all of the like stuff people hate about it, and I got like a few clicks in, I was like, nope, this is is not it.
You get it. I mean, you get a feel pretty quick. Like there is certainly there's a vibe. There's a sniff test. Well, I want to start this. Like I said, we talk a lot about MMOs, but mostly in it as a joke. And I want to talk about the history of this genre because I do find this to be one of the more interesting stories in like game development and games as an industry. And something that is like so much both a relic of the past, but also like its DNA is unavoidably everywhere.
Oh, it's right? Every game is
some flavor of it.
Service game now, like that. Yeah.
So massively multiplayer online role-playing game, MMORPGs, often shortened to MMOs, but in that context, it does refer to the full thing. These obviously have and when we talk about MMOs, just for the sake of context, what I'm talking about is really like the standard old traditional style, the World of Warcraft model. So your Worlds of Warcraft, your Final Fantasies 11 and 14, Black Desert Online, Lineage, EverQuest, I can keep going, Star Trek Online, anything that's like something online, Elder Scrolls Online, Lord of the Rings Online, right? Like I think everybody in gaming has touched one of these, and like Kyle said, I know for a fact that there was a big period of like just dipping a toe in when there was 1,000 of them and they're all free to play and like low risk, low reward, right? But the history of this is such a flash in the pan where it went to like relatively obscure to like all of a sudden gold rush to no one's fucking playing these anymore. And when you talk about where that on-ramp starts, you have to talk about Ultima Online. Ultima Online is considered not necessarily the first of these, but definitely like the granddaddy, the first successful one. Ultima Online, if you've played the old Baldur's Gate, not BG3, but Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, it very much looks like that. It came out in 96. So it follows that classic computer RPG, CRPG style top-down, like the original Diablo, like Planescape Torment. But it was just like those old D&D top-down games, but just allowed for a fully open social environment. And when I say open, boy howdy, I mean open. You could just do whatever. It was basically just a big old sandbox full of D&D nerds. Ultima Online, very, very light on narrative, and very light on combat, because it was what I'm calling a sociological sandbox. And what I mean by that is, it was really just like, hey, run wild. There were no, in modern games today, you have things like auction houses and market boards and like cash shops and things that most of your interactions are done with NPCs. This is literally just like, hey, you're going to go farm stuff and you got to go sell it. and like you're just making an online community, right? So players would just set up their own marketplace. They would lie, they could cheat, they could just murder whomever, and pretty much without consequence, with the exception of like the one game thing was they would like light up your character in red if you killed enough people, and players could actually pay for and set bounties on other players.
Oh,
It was like really, really interesting. The Ultima Online, and then again, there's good and bad of this, right? Because Ultima Online was so rules light, so unmodded, that there is an actually pretty famous incident where the creator of the game was assassinated because the creator of the game would often go in and like do like live events and stuff with his like avatar character, who was like a prince or something. He was just assassinated while addressing a crowd, like in a open forum in a town, and because he forgot to toggle his invulnerable status.
Oh no!
good.
Yeah. So they were like, well, we probably got to dial this back a little bit. So you got, in one hand, you got Ultima Online. In another hand, you got EverQuest. And EverQuest released in 1999 by Sony Online Entertainment, RIP. EverQuest, my God, EverQuest made such an impact with such a very specific type of person. So Ultima Online was this kind of like 2D 2.5, a top-down kind of like D&D paper doll style, right? Where EverQuest was this fully 3D, immersive, like I'm going to take my party, I'm going to go hunt some monsters. I'm going to go, kill a dungeon. I'm going to go do a dungeon. And it explored this big explorable 3D world. Players would build characters and classes following the, say it with me, blessed trinity of tank, DPS, and support. This is what basically codified the blessed trinity that we know and love today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
And the Holy Spirit, that's right. The game was obtuse, it was grindy, and it was incredibly punishing. To give you a couple of examples, like there was no mini map, or there was no like major, there was just a world map. There wasn't like a mini map with like icons on it. It was, you just went and found stuff yourself. This is also 1999, right? Like a lot of these games didn't have that shit. But more importantly, when you died, you would lose experience. That was like the whole bit, is you were punished, and you would not only lose experience, you would lose everything in your inventory.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I know, to speak on the grindiness, is like, and I'm gonna mess this up, but it's something like the grind to get to like, so the level cap is level 99, and the grind to get from 98 to 99, you need the same amount of experience that you got from level 1 to level 98.
Experience thresholds double. So that one level is all of the XP that you've gained thus far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
EverQuest wasn't the only one like that. I played Final Fantasy 11. It was the same thing.
It's wretched.
Yeah. And again, like these games were meant to be hard because the monetization model was subscriptions. They wanted this to be the game that you play forever. Like why would we want people to beat our game? They're going to keep subbing. They're going to keep subbing and coming in week after week. But it was also, again, it was 1999. There weren't social outlets. We didn't have texting. We didn't have AOL chat, right? Like this was a social outlet, and you would go on and the idea was that you were sharing, quest solutions, and you were going to, hubs and making parties yourself. And again, before auction houses, you were selling and doing like bartering yourself. Like it was all player driven, right?
Oh, and I know, like, we'll get to it when we get to WoW, I'm sure, but like, I had WoW friends that would like change plans because their guild was raiding that night. Like,
Well, and that's still very much a thing, but very much, but even more so back then. And again, like we're still, when we talk about audience, right? We're still talking about a pretty niche audience. In the late 90s, people didn't play computer games. There was a very particular, most kids weren't playing computer games. Save for the odd, like where in the world was Carmen Sandiego, like people playing these like really hardcore RPGs were like mega D&D nerds, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So EverQuest, despite all of that, did really, really well. And it actually, its highest subscriber peak was about 500,000 active subscribers, 550,000. Granted, like by 2003, when this was a little bit more mainstream, but like that's pretty big. EverQuest was considered to be a massive commercial success.
Yeah.
In its own right. Granted, like these days, those numbers wouldn't be that great, but at the time, very big, very influential game. Now,
Scaled for gaming inflation. Yeah.
Exactly. Scaled for gaming inflation, scaled for popularity, scaled for niche, right? So, because again, in 1999, who had a reliable internet, right? Like in order to play FF11, I had to go and like unplug the phone jack and like pop it in and log in to play online and get about an hour out before my dad needed to use the phone,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Can't order Domino's until Todd gets off the computer from playing StarCraft.
Exactly. Can't talk to my uncle about the Steeler game without booting Andrew off his Vigi games. So after EverQuest's initial popularity, studios would then start to experiment with their own versions. This is kind of this first foray into this genre. And during this early aughts, we saw a lot of these like experimental MMO explorations. You've got Asheron's Call, Dark Age of Camelot. Both of these were like dark fantasy, a little bit more focused on like PvP, specifically with Dark Age of Camelot. You've got the futuristic Anarchy Online, which was just like take place in 2700 sci-fi dystopia. And then we had some explorations with known properties, of course, Final Fantasy XI, which I played a lot, which I'll talk about later. And then we've got The Matrix Online, which is a personal, that's a personal favorite flop.
Hey, that name is dumb. That's like ATM machine, and I don't like it.
I think there are a lot of like property online MMORPGs, and I think that's the worst thing you could name your
It is the
MMO.
worst and the first exploration example of that.
Yeah.
Critically underloved City of Heroes and then subsequent City of Villains, which was to this day one of the best of this genre.
I think City of Heroes was one I tried at one point too.
I also think I dabbled with City of Heroes briefly.
It was
because then there was City of Villains too.
There's City of Villains. City of Heroes was a unfortunately short-lived superhero MMO.
Yeah.
And it is still considered to be like some of the best character customization ever to this day. It was pretty cool. And then Star Wars Galaxies, which is also I never played, but is a lot of people remember very fondly as a Star Wars sandbox. This was the one where you could like play the whole game and never do any combat and just like be a dancer and own a club in Star Wars world.
Cool.
Very cool. So this first major wave of MMOs all followed this EverQuest model. Granted, like, again, it was all, you picked whatever flavor and font you wanted, but it really was pick a class, specialization to determine your abilities. Combat was pretty much minimal and relegated to like clicking certain lines of like abilities from a spell book while you just kind of watched your character auto attack. So granted, like the immersion was there, but it was a lot of like, right? Like you're just watching your little string bean man swing a sword. And solo play, forget it. Solo play was all but impossible after that, like an initial like newbie island, which is I'm going to use as a general term for every new player's zone. It's a newbie island. We got
Newbie Island, yeah,
got it.
And so and again, that was very much by design. It forced people to collaborate and form parties. Everyone who's played MMOs, myself included at this time, has a lot of memories, good and bad, of sitting in the major hub and saying LFG tank, LFG, looking for group tank, right? I played a black mage in Final Fantasy XI, and if I knew that I was going to log in that night, I planned on a 3-hour block. 45 minutes was LFG BLM, LFG black mage BLM. And then I'd have to like go what my stats were because you have to have the best in slot stats just to be able to be selected because you got a big queue of people that want to party up. And then you would play for 2 hours and then somebody would die or get disconnected and then you'd be done.
What a nightmare.
Yeah, but like again, and it was one of those things where like it's the most amount of fun that I would never ever do again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Our standards have raised since then in a way that you can never go back to it. But like,
Yeah,
for its time,
it was novel. It was novel at the time.
it was the
when
best
I was
thing.
this was 2001, 2002, right? Like it was this or Napster chat rooms, and it was I made
for,
friends with my guild. Like it was a great time.
And for a crunchy RPG nerd, like best thing in the world.
Yeah,
endless RPG gameplay, like perfect.
Exactly. So, and I mentioned before, a lot of that sandbox DNA would carry on to these games. I mentioned Star Wars Galaxies, like you could basically build a whole town. Final Fantasy XI introduced like a whole like series of crafting classes. They had an auction board, but it was like you could spend hours and days like just like being a weaver and making stuff and selling it in the in-game economy, which is fun in its own right. It's basically playing fantasy stock market. I remember I have a good memory of my guildies and I literally crashing the entire game's economy because we found an exploit for like a really rare item like adamantium, which means nothing, or not adamantium, adamantine. And we crashed the game's economy for 4 days. It was great. It was really fun. Yeah, it was great. It was a great memory. But again, that social aspect, the combat sucked, right? It did not respect your time one bit. It was all about the social aspect. And then the Fire Nation attacked. Everything changed with the release of 2004's World of Warcraft. So I think we all said
decidedly a retro game.
Decidedly,
Yep.
unabashedly a retro game, especially now. So a save for Matt. We've all dipped our toes into WoW. I played vanilla WoW. I played it. I never got max level, but I got to level 40, which max level was 60. So I got a good deal of it, but then I never played after any of the expansions. And when we say vanilla WoW, just the original, the base game. So vanilla World of Warcraft, the 2004 version of World of Warcraft, it is really hard to picture it now unless you play WoW Classic, but it is so different than WoW is today. It is, if you compare WoW now to WoW in 2004, it is much closer to EverQuest in that like punishing difficulty, not respecting of your time. There have been tons and tons of quality of life changes to that game and to the overall genre since then. But there were still a lot of differences that WoW made that became standard in other games. I think the biggest thing was instead of getting your like list of abilities in your spell book or your ability screen, you now had a hot bar of like a half a dozen cooldowns. And this is where we start to get into cooldown. Not necessarily the first game to do this, but it is taking that 1, 2, 3, 4 or F1, F2, F2, F3, F4 approach of like a Diablo and mapping your abilities to these cooldowns. What that means is there's no resources. In FF11, for example, the difference is you have a laundry list of spells and you just have mana. And you have to recharge your mana after every combat and it sucks.
Yeah.
Now it's just you just press buttons until when they light up. You just press the buttons. You press buttons real good. And if you press buttons real fast, big numbers go up, big numbers go burr.
Big numbers go burr.
Love
Right?
big numbers.
We love big numbies.
And playing these games and the skill behind these games all comes into, can you synergize the abilities together, right? Because it's not just you don't just shoot fireball, you have debuff that makes enemies take fireball more, and you have buff that makes fireball better, and then you shoot fireball, right?
And then you shoot fireball.
And then you shoot fireball. So it's all about maximizing what's called the rotation.
Man, I have been in the Blizzard system for so long that like all of these words have just become top of mind to me, and it is wild but makes so much sense that so many of the words that like I use now talking about Overwatch come from this. This is where this comes from, which is why I say like Overwatch is more of an MMO than it isn't. In my opinion.
Yeah.
So there's that piece of it. So you've got your laundry list of abilities, right? And as you progress, as you grow, you customize, you create a build, you decide, do I want to put more effort into healing or do I want to do fireball bigger? Or maybe instead of fireball, I want lightning ball, right? It's all that kind of thing, just like you would in any other RPG. But the other side of it is you're not just standing still and casting fireball. Enemies also have abilities. Enemies can do things too. And this was the other big thing in combat that Warcraft changed was you have something to do with your feet. You're not just standing still and waiting for your little paper doll to swing sword.
Mm-hmm.
You got to dodge. You got to dodge the enemy's fireball. So you see a big pool of red. If you stand in the red, you're bad. So you got to get out of the red. You got to move from the red. And I'm making this sound very silly, but this is the core of MMORPG gameplay, right? It's mastering the order and the synergies of your abilities, your rotation, while paying attention to the mechanics and the telegraphed attacks. And for somebody who plays Final Fantasy XIV, that's the fun of the combat. That's what makes the game. It's watching, just like you're playing like a Dark Souls game, you're watching the boss and saying like, oh, I know this particular ability. I'm gonna, and game developers have gotten smart. They make the mechanics, sillier and sillier. There's a famous raid in FF14 where you have to do long division, there's like all kinds of the monster will reduce your health from either 1 to 4 and you got to do multiplication to get it to a prime number. Like it can get very silly. It can get very complicated too. And that's why, when we talk about difficulty, it's not just doing a memorization pattern of buttons. It's doing a memorized pattern of buttons while you're fucking dancing, while you're playing DDR.
While you're moving around. And the other part is that you mentioned, in coordination with your teammates who you have to...
That's correct.
...hit the buttons in synchronization with them and do the dance...
Yeah.
...that they're doing.
I
and
want
that's
to...
the fun of it too, is when your team gets humming and is on on that wavelength. That's when you're like, oh shit, this is the game.
That's when it starts to click. I do so like always, we have an image library, and I do want you guys to take a look at this first image. This is the most cursed image today, and just go ahead and
tough.
right click open image in new tab, just so you can really get the full view. So I searched for what we're looking at here is I specifically searched for a cursed MMORPG UI user interface. Because I think MMOs are known for having pretty cursed, pretty clunky user interfaces. There's a lot of stuff on screen. There's a lot of particle effects and abilities, but also mostly people who play WoW also install a myriad of third-party, what they call parsing tools, that basically says, is your fireball doing more damage than your partner's fireball? Who's got the best fireball, right? And the type of player, your garden variety, WoW Raider, really cares about that shit. So this is an especially cursed UI of this person has a terrible hot bar with everything in their bag, inventory is on it, plus their party's uncollapsed inventory, plus 3 or 4 different versions of parsers. You can't even see what's going on.
All the active all the cooldowns.
All the cooldowns are super big in the middle of the screen.
There's the joke that if a colonial child drank
McDonald's Sprite.
Like McDonald's Sprite or a Bang energy drink today, they would just explode. If you showed this to a founding father, they would rethink their entire lives.
Yeah, they would call you the devil. That's for sure.
You would if you tried to explain what was happening in this image to Joe Biden, you'd give him a stroke.
Yeah, I mean, this is
nothing. That's not very hard to do. Anyway, so that's a little bit of MMO theory. World of Warcraft, come to some of the other things that WoW did. WoW made progression much more of a focus than previous games, right? Previous games, it was endgame wasn't really a thing. It was we want to get people to continue playing the game, so we're just going to make it really, really hard. But for WoW, it was more of it was thought of as more of a Disneyland ride, right? It was, you're going to get to the end of the game. We're just going to kind of take you there. And yeah, you're going to get challenged along the way, but there's all these little Skinner box things to pop up to keep you coming back, right? So it's not like your goal is to get to 99. Your goal is to get to level 10, because at level 10 you can get access to Orgrimmar, and then I can go see Orgrimmar and then go hang out with Thrall, my buddy Thrall from Warcraft 3, who I love so much. And then at level 20, I'll get access to Alliance City, so I can go PvP. And then level 40, I'll get access to a mount, so I can finally get a wolf mount, so I don't have to run through the area outside of Orgrimmar that I don't remember what it's called. I played Horde, if that wasn't clear. But again, there was all these little dopamine hits that didn't exist in the past. The grind of leveling, it wasn't just go party up and fight monsters. Now you start to see questing, and there are story missions, there are quest missions. Every town has 17 little yellow exclamation points where you can go get a quest. And yeah, those quests are go kill 10 spiders in this cave, but it gives you a task to do rather than just like go run around and kill the same monster over and over and over again.
Andrew, is WoW... was WoW the first to have they would have the level 10, raids set up, you would...
the instance dungeons?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that was another thing. WoW invented a lot of things. WoW basically created the idea of an instanced area. Now this was... I don't want to say they created it. They popularized the instance dungeons.
Yeah.
FF11 and some other games also did this, but it was only with story missions and cutscenes. So FF11, you had there were a couple bosses throughout the main quest, the main campaign, where it would be instanced. But WoW kind of did this whole thing where it's you're having a whole dungeon that's instanced, and that's at level 10. And all instance means is it's crafted. It's separate. It's separate from everybody. So in the past, it was all, if you were playing on a really cluttered server and you were hunting a particular enemy, and like in FF11, this was very much a thing. There was a thing called Notorious Mobs that gave extra experience, loot, rare drops and everything. Those Notorious Mobs would spawn every 2 hours, and that was it. And that was applied to everybody on the server. So if you didn't fight, if you weren't the first person to hit that Notorious Mob, you were fucked.
Yeah.
So instance play allows for everyone to have their own.
Another one, it sounds as though WoW was also the first one that hitting the level cap was more of a given.
Yes. Actually, segue to my next point. That's exactly right. So WoW cemented the idea that the end game is the game.
Yeah. Now we play the game.
Now we can play the game.
Yeah.
And that this really wasn't the case in vanilla WoW. It really didn't become the case until by the time of Wrath of the Lich King.
Okay.
Which was 08. But even in WoW vanilla, it had introduced endgame raids. And a raid is just a really hard, collaborative dungeon, whatever, right? It could be with 4 people, it could be 8 people, it could be 40 people. Leroy Jenkins, famously, that's a raid. That is from the original WoW raid. I believe it's the original one.
Yeah.
And again, EverQuest had raid content too, but WoW made it more of a thing. It you heard about it. You're like, oh my god, I want to finally get to the raid, right? And in vanilla WoW, like I said, I was probably your garden variety average person playing WoW. I never made it to max level. I played for a year and I got to level 40.
Sure.
And I had a great time. I wouldn't take it back. And most people were like that. It was still the top 1 to 5%. But by 2008, Wrath of the Lich King, it was an intended you were being taken through a tour of the world, and you were meant to get to the end game. That kind of brings me to the next point. So because of that, gamers are gamers, and MMO gamers are a particularly unique breed in that there's a really good documentary. I'll link it in the notes. It describes MMO gamers as locusts, as a plague of locusts swarming and whatever, just to consume whatever they are given. And that's what MMO players do, right? They consume as much as they can, as quick as they can, and then they complain that there's not enough to do. I think every video game industry niche does this, but MMOs to a very toxic extent. So then it creates this gameplay loop was like, well, you just need to get more and you got to grind for the next thing. And this starts to introduce the gear grind, which that's why when people say end game is the real end game, that's the game is you now the way the way WoW is today, people rush and like, X out of storylines and skip cutscenes and, rush to get to that end raid so they can be the first one to do the raid. And then they can start grinding that gear and be among the first people to have that new loot, right? Not everyone's like that, but that is kind of the general vibe, especially in World of Warcraft. It's not that bad in others, but that's what WoW has become known as.
And part of that is like a, self-fulfilling prophecy of like, these are the people spending the most money on your game. Their subscriptions last the longest. So they the developers cater to that by making the loot drops matter more and then making the loot drops more of a
it's all the monetization.
gamble.
It's all a result of the monetization. If your not entire, but if the majority of your revenue is coming from monthly subscriptions, you are fiscally incentivized to make sure that people are coming back again and again and again and never stop playing this game.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's
them dailies.
That subscription model is the proto battle pass and how we got here today.
100%.
And
Mythic dailies.
Quest.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say Mythic Quest, which was the Apple TV show that we talked about before, has Danny Pudi as Brad from Monetization, who paints a very clear picture of like how important this is to a game and also maybe how it is the root of all evil.
It really is.
Go ahead.
So Todd mentioned dailies, and this is another kind of thing that came from WoW. Didn't invent it, but popularized it. The developer's answer to people are doing this stuff too fast, we need to slow them, is let's time gate stuff. So now it's, well, you can only get a certain amount of renown a day, or you can only get, and FF14 does it too, every time there's a new raid tier, you can only get the special currency. You can only, you cap that amount of currency every week, or you can only get one piece of loot a week, or you can get like certain bonuses each day, right? So that's where dailies and weeklies definitely come from, is this like idea of time gating. Is like you got to log in every day so you can do your dailies, because otherwise, what do we have? And just life is an unending spiral of chaos. So at WoW's popularity, just to give you guys a little bit sense in numbers, right? I mentioned EverQuest was like 550,000 subscribers or something. At WoW's peak, well, not even by WoW's peak, by the end of the 2000s, WoW had hit more than 10 million subscribers.
Oh my!
Wow.
Yeah. So by the end of Wrath of the Lich King, which was WoW's peak, they had surpassed, I think, 12 million subscribers.
I looked it up to put it into context. PS Plus has 45 million active subscribers. Here in 2024, and that's a service that lets you play many games for free. WoW had a fifth of that subscriber base.
If you want to understand why Bobby Kotick is as rich as Bobby Kotick is, it's due in part because World of Warcraft had more than 10 times the subscribers of any other massively multiplayer online game ever.
Yeah.
At any point of history.
I mean, Overwatch 2 crossed 10 million players like a week ago. And that's in 2024 players.
2024 numbers.
Not in 2008
and
numbers.
that's free to play players, not active monthly subscribers.
Exactly.
To be clear.
Yeah.
Because this was back in Wrath of the Lich King, there was no free to play option.
And I know I don't know if this is still a thing that happens. Like at this time, I knew people that would they would max level a character with the intention of selling that account. Like they would have 2 or 3 accounts going, their main one, and then the one that they were gonna like sell out to effectively fund their hobby / addiction.
Well,
for the
and that
next year.
was that. I remember back in high school, so back to Phantasy Star Online, I had a buddy that paid like $30 and bought a GameCube memory card online that had all the legendary
Oh,
items.
jeez.
So someone had figured out an item dupe.
Yeah,
And so,
Yeah.
sure.
but I mean, here was like, talk about playing to level up to win the game. Like,
Yeah.
suddenly
Yeah.
we had all the toys that you had to wait until level 200 or at least like 125, 150 to get. We had them all at level 60. And we were just like, oh, so we're gods now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
cool.
Gods. Yeah. So we've talked a lot. That's World of Warcraft, but around this time, during the height of WoW's popularity, we also saw this next wave of MMORPGs, which were quite literally called the WoW killers. There were a few that were even advertised as like we're not in Azeroth anymore. Now, yeah.
Good.
Now,
Oh, yeah.
studios by this point had seen the cash that Blizzard were raking in and went full on Bobby Kotick and said, how do we get this money? So this is really where we got the era of popular franchise online. I will just name a few. The Lord of the Rings online. Pirates of the Caribbean online.
Oof.
Warhammer online. Star Trek online, which I think is still active today. Lego Universe. DC Universe online.
Oof.
And Hello Kitty online.
Oh,
Hello Kitty on Hello Kitty Island Adventure.
Yeah, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. We also saw what were advertised and what the industry thought would be surefire winners that absolutely fell flat on their faces at this point. You've got Aeon, which was an NCSoft game. Age of Conan, which, again, it's like, if you heard about it, you know about it. If you don't, you don't. Final Fantasy 14 1.0, which famously they had to blow up with a meteor because it was
Love
so
that.
bad. And Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is not a bad game, but just, again, like did not go very well.
Well, and when you're coming for the crown
Yep.
against, and then the market is flooded with all the competitors also going for the crown, you're like, and I have to assume again, that's part of it too, is
Yeah.
like the fan base is then diluted, and I'm guessing their hope was like, let's dilute some of the fan base away
It's exactly that.
WoW.
It's exactly that, and it's also, I'm going for the crown, but it's the exact same crown, and I'm not bringing anything new to the table.
Yeah.
I'm blue, and that person's red. Like, that's
Except an IP. I have an IP attached to it,
exactly
and
Yep.
WoW was an IP at that, like,
right.
Warcraft
again,
was an IP at that point.
And I think people approach this like they did offline games, like that games that you would just buy at the store, because it was like, yeah, if you really like Legend of Zelda, cool, go play Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Like, you'll probably do that. But if you're playing World of Warcraft, you have committed, you have sunken thousands of hours, like sunk cost fallacy, for the same reason people don't leave cults. People don't leave World of Warcraft very easily unless they have a really good fucking reason.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, but Lord of the Rings Online, you can't just do the same thing worse and say, come play our game. It's different.
Right.
It's
I'm not after having spent 4 solid years giving Blizzard my $8 a month.
Yeah.
I'm not starting at 0
No.
because I could meet Legolas in 50 hours.
Right. In
Like,
50 hours. And that's exactly because it's not starting at max level. It's starting at level 1, starting
Right.
all over again.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, don't say that too loud. The Marvel Rivals people will hear you.
right.
So in that same era, we see like 2010, 2011, like, oh, we're going to get popular franchise online. By 2013, we got a lot of popular franchise online is going free to play, guys.
Yo,
Yeah, we sure
I
did.
remember that too.
Yeah. And this is that, like what Kyle mentioned earlier, this was that kind of window of like, there are 40 odd MMO games that are all basically the same and all are free to play. Go and dip your toes in one. If it clicks, great, but it probably won't.
That is exactly the phase I tried a lot of these.
Same.
Yeah.
And absolutely same.
Mhm.
And by 2015, 2016, they all were done because they're free to play. They couldn't afford, those servers are expensive to load. So there were a lot of these that died. And even the two juggernauts, which was of course World of Warcraft, and then Final Fantasy 14 released as A Realm Reborn, got a lot of their subscriber base, right? Like those are both subscriber models, but as we've talked about many times, they also allow you to play most of the game for free.
Right.
You could, I think,
unrestricted
by this
up to
point-
level 70, as they say.
Well, and I think by this point too, like if you weren't dumb about it, you could farm your next month in WoW in like
That is Yvonne
8
Martin.
hours. That's 2.
Oh,
WoW,
you're right. I think while there was,
WoW
I
hit
do
that
remember there
point.
was a thing. I don't think you can do that anymore. But you're right. I think you could
Okay.
you could do that at some point. I don't remember what that. There was a real money transfer thing. Yeah, you could get.
Yeah.
But now they have the WoW token, and it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So today there are a decent amount of MMORPGs around, but the standard is to build them, like we said at the beginning, these free to play, these live service type monetizations. So we still have a couple monthly subscription games, WoW and FF14. That's pretty rare. Games like Destiny, which I will die on the hill and say Destiny is an MMORPG just flavored with gun.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah,
Is
Destiny-
anybody arguing you?
I don't know. That's a hot take.
No,
Look,
no one's serious. I don't
No,
think.
no one's
Sure,
serious.
sure.
Destiny gives you the base game, and then you can buy all of the story expansions, which are very episodic, right? As just kind of like one-offs. And then you've got the more kind of, I would say, mobile type model, like Star Trek Online. What's the other one? Neverwinter, where there's a cash shop and you can buy cosmetics, but you can also get keys for lock boxes and pay to have things quicker and all that stuff. All those kind of predatory
they're less
things.
RPGs and more
Freemium? Is that the word you're looking for?
freemium. They're like idle. They're more idle games.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
That
They're
idle
idle
monetization,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that leave Guild Wars? So let's rewind the clock to 2000. 3 developers from Blizzard leave their former studio and form their own thing that would eventually be known as ArenaNet.
With
And
hookers and blackjack.
Hookers and blackjack. Hookers and blackjack, and a wealth of online game knowledge, because between the 3 of them, their resumes were like Warcraft 2, StarCraft, Warcraft
Right.
3, BattleNet, building BattleNet,
Oh, man.
and then even early versions of World of Warcraft. So these guys come in and they knew online games. They're like, we got it, Western RPG online. We're good. If you've ever heard of NCSoft, this is a South Korean publisher. They've done a bunch of MMORPGs, but at the time, they were only really known for Lineage, which is a Korean RPG. Which again, if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. NCSoft acquired ArenaNet in 2002, and NCSoft would be the engine that would fuel Guild Wars for the foreseeable future. Now part of the MMO Gold Rush, NCSoft would also publish a bunch of other games, including what we mentioned, City of Heroes. So that's the other one that NCSoft is probably most known for outside of those very Korean heavy ones. So Guild Wars was originally released in April of 2005, right after City of Heroes. It was marketed as an MMORPG, but it really doesn't play like it. It is, I would say, when I watched some videos, my initial reaction was oh, it's Diablo. It's Diablo.
Okay.
You go to a hub and there are other people running around, and then you go and do your mission. And you can play with other people, but you can also just play with NPC companions. So it's not an MMO in the traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But what put the guild in Guild Wars, said the name of the thing, was the optional PvP. Those were the prototypical the wars. Those were the wars of the guilds, the PvP option. So Guild Wars released to critical and commercial success as the 4th best-selling PC game of 2005, having sold about 500,000 units, which again, pretty big for PC games in early 2000s numbers. Within the next 3 years up until 2007, Guild Wars would release 2 more standalone campaigns. Again, their model was more like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, where like these were like individual D&D type campaigns. And then they would release a full expansion that added like classes and other features. So there you got 1, 2, 3. So in all there was like 4 separate games effectively that kind of build on top of each other. And then in 2007, ArenaNet announced Guild Wars 2, which would be a brand new experience taking place literally like 250 years after the events of Guild Wars 1. So they were basically like, hey, we're doing a brand new thing. We're going to end Guild Wars 1 in this timeline, and then we're going to do something else. So 5 years later, after Final Fantasy XIV had an entire moon set on it, and WoW was running wild with panda memes, Guild Wars 2 released as a standard traditional MMORPG. So I find this interesting because, again, like it was announced in 2007, but not released until 2012, which was a very different world.
Yeah, very different. Yeah.
I mean, you're going from like the hype of Wrath of the Lich King to like, again, Final Fantasy XIV being blown up with a moon.
The downslope of the genre. Yeah. Like, the genre was on its decline at that point.
For sure. So right off the bat, Guild Wars 2 really differentiated itself from WoW and from the other games at the time with a focus on this like customized personal storytelling and really focused on world building. Sure, other games were doing that, but it was like your story. And it really doubled down on the like, you're playing a D&D campaign and this is your story. It also brought pretty different and at the time very fresh philosophies on monetization. This was one of the first, like, you can just like pop in and play. This was the first, there was no monthly subscription. You just bought the game and you just play it. And that was a huge thing for people because people were already sick of the monetization and the, you know, the little nickel and diming.
It's 5 years behind on MMOs, but 5 years ahead on free to play.
Right. Yep. Right. Pretty much. And it was, you know, pretty revolutionary in that like the devs were really originally very against doing like the end game gear grind. So they were like, yeah, you play the game and like that's the story, and we'll keep releasing content, but like we're not doing the gear grind. Spoiler, they ended up doing the gear grind.
I was gonna say it feels like they're gonna continue doing the gear grind.
But what I think is really cool about Guild Wars 2, much like Guild Wars 1, is it follows, again, that combat is much more that Diablo style where you just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have you ever played like Path of Exile or or is it Path of Exile? Any of those like kind of top down where like you don't have a ton of abilities and they all have different cooldowns. Like, so you have like your AoE, you have your heal, you have your this and that. So it's a little bit simpler than your WoW or your FF14 model. But where Guild Wars 2 is frankly really cool and still pretty unique is in its build customization. To give you an example, so there are 9 classes. I played like 3 or 4 hours just to get like the new player experience, and I rolled an Elementalist, which is, you know, a mage. And Elementalist has a series of abilities that are, you get 5 abilities that are, you get 5 like fire attacks, 5 earth, 5 air, 5 water. And you can switch between them at any point. Just press like F1, F2, you switch between them. But what's really cool is not only like do you have a bunch of abilities to flip through just with that, you can equip any weapon in the game, regardless of class. So you can have cool. a big, so you can be a mage with a big old fuck you axe, or you can have like a gun, and which is really fun. And the weapons give you like significantly different abilities. So like
sure.
I started, which is really cool. So I started with a dagger, and I had like a fire, kind of like a fire wave attack. That was my auto attack. It was really fast. And then I switched to a staff, and it turned into like a legit fireball. I had at one point, I watched a video where it was like, okay, like the best in slot build is like pistol build with an earth, you know, with an earth signet and like all this stuff. So it allows for a lot of like really deep customization, which is very fun. So if that's your thing, if you like menuing, boy, do I have a game for you. Now, in a time where all of these WoW killers had been hyped up, and subsequently died, Guild Wars actually had a really successful launch, the most successful MMO launch since WoW, in that it sold 3 million copies in the first 2 weeks, and then reached a peak of like that 500,000. So hit that EverQuest numbers. 460,000 players concurrently, like at one point in that first bit. Again, it's never hit WoW numbers anywhere close, but it's done well enough. It also received like straight 9s and 10s for reviewers, which is pretty rare because reviewers tend to hate MMORPGs.
I do remember
reviewed
that
high.
as well. Yeah.
But as all things do, the heat died off pretty quickly after those first few months. Players got to the end of the game, realized there wasn't much to do, and of course WoW had trained people to rush to the end, which people did, and people complained, which the developers were like, which they do, and the developers eventually added an end game gear grind, which they did. So after several months, ArenaSoft released a series of free expansions that they called Living World, and we'll talk about them after the break. But Living World was kind of originally intended to be, think like webisodes, like bi-weekly, like whatever webisodes were in 2009.
Oh, okay.
Like bi-weekly installments of, little bite-sized things like come log in, hang out with your friends. That content would go away, so it was like very timely, therefore like filler arc.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. But yeah, to date, today, Guild Wars 2 is one of the few of this era, alongside WoW, FF14, Elder Scrolls Online, Old School RuneScape, and Black Desert Online, that are still like this era, that are still trucking, that are still considered to be successful and active in 2014. And like I said, the base game is free to play. We've seen 4 expansions since 2012 that people can just purchase today as part of their account. We've got Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, End of Dragons, and Secrets of the Obscure, which was released last year. And a 5th expansion titled Janthier Wilds is scheduled to release in August of 2024. So the game is still rolling on.
Dang.
Wow.
And when did it launch?
In
2012.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so it's moving. It's still there.
Wow.
And we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we are going to get into the lore of Guild Wars 2. Stay with us.
If you want to have your own hot girl of the 21st century summer, please go over to patreon.com/debatethis
Cast
and subscribe.
/debate this cast.
/debatethiscast and subscribe to join us on Deconstructed, where we will be watching all 3 Xenon Girl of the 21st Century movies this summer and talking about them.
See this Lapidus.
It's the Zillogy.
That's the thing from the show, Todd. It is the Zillogy.
Zillogy is what I would scroll at night when I was longing for what houses I couldn't afford.
No, that's actually the religion that belongs to the website that you would scroll for houses that you can't afford.
Yeah.
You gotta have the right Zayton count.
Todd is a practicing Zillogist.
Yeah, what are your Zidichlorians like?
The stupidest fucking thing we're doing.
It's so good.
And we're back. All right. Before the break, we went into a little bit of history of MMORPGs. Now we're going to get into the meat of today, which is the lore and story of Guild Wars 2. I will state beforehand, there are 4 expansions. We are not going to go through all 4 expansions. We're going to go through the base game, and then we're going to go through some of the content from the first expansion. And then I will end on a little bit of teaser, so that if you're interested in playing Guild Wars 2, there's still a ton of content to go explore yourself. Okay. Once more, we've got the old image library, Imgur link. So go ahead and check out if you are watching and not, if you're listening and you're not driving, go to the show notes and check out the Imgur library and you can follow along. The real image one, which is not 1A, but the real image one is a little bit of, again, another busy busy image, but I wanted to throw it in here. This is the full world map of Tyria, which is where Guild Wars 1 and 2 both take place. And much like the other one, I recommend right-click, open image in new tab, because there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot, and you can zoom in because it is a pretty busy image.
There's a lot going on here.
There's a lot going on. And again, we're not going to go in a lot of the specifics, but I do find it helpful to have a little bit of a visual. So
are these, should we just assume that the numbers on here are levels?
Yeah, you can ignore the numbers. Those are levels. And it just kind of tells you like where you could really just look at the major areas. The smaller ones are all zones and basically just talk about like what's available in which expansion, which we won't get into the specifics of. But just so you have an idea of like the overall
the general layout.
Area. Yeah, the general layout.
Yeah.
So I specifically didn't go through the story of Guild Wars 1 because frankly there's not a ton you really need to know. They are very different stories. So much so that Guild Wars 1 is basically ancient history by the time Guild Wars 2 comes, or it's 250 years. Really like what you need to know is Guild Wars 1 primarily focused on the exodus of the human race from Ascalon, which is this area in the top right, the northeast. So humanity originally lived in 3 areas. They lived in Krita, which is this one kind of the middle north, Ascalon all the way to the northeast, and then this little area that's called the Ruins of Or. Well, there's a reason why it's called the Ruins, because nobody lives there anymore. So those originally at one point in Guild Wars 1, humanity lived in those 3 sections. You mostly only play as a human in Guild Wars 1, and it's dealing with basically a series of like apocalyptic events that make you flee your homeland. So by the time of Guild Wars 2, all of humanity is basically huddled together in this one area of Krita. So the other major thing to know is that Guild Wars 1 ends with one of the 6 god of men. Doesn't matter. His name is Abaddon. He's the god of secrets. Doesn't matter. He does a lot of big bad stuff and he wants to destroy the world, and he doesn't because you stop him. And his ultimate defeat is what is, again, step 2, step 3, prophet, leads to the awakening of the Elder Dragons. And that's where we're at. Yeah, I got you there.
Love me a good Elder Dragon.
That's right.
I just love that the Abaddon, both referenced in Guild Wars, referenced in the Bible, and referenced in Warhammer. I'm sure many others, but also always shows up not a chill guy.
Abaddon, frequent user, frequent flyer in your dark fantasy. He never is a good guy. Never is a good guy. Yeah.
No.
So we're talking about the emergence of the Elder Dragons, who are these kind of godlike dragons, but godlike figures that just kind of rampage across the world, leaving mass destruction in their wake wherever they go. There are 6 Elder Dragons, and we'll get into each of them. But those were some of your names that we started.
I was going to ask
because that wasn't obvious. Yes,
that's where our names came from. Great.
So when we talk about the world of an MMO, it's always good to start with the character selection. What can you play as, and what are the classes, and what can you build, right? So upon starting a new character, if you're starting a new character in Guild Wars 2, you have your option among one of 5 species, all with their own set of like internal issues and politics that you navigate as part of your story. So images 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the different the species in Guild Wars 2. And I wanted to show these are all concept arts, but I wanted to show these because Guild Wars 2 has a really interesting and unique art style. There are fully animated cutscenes, but a lot of the world building and a lot of the exposition is done in these like kind of comic book style animated panels. And it's using this really cool, like kind of watercolor illustration style. I really like it. It's kind of hard to pick out details, but I think it's a really cool identity that Guild Wars has with it.
This art is really sick. I like this a lot.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So we start with humans. There's, always a lighthouse, always a human. Humans were, as I mentioned, once kind of the dominant presence in Tyria, but after the events of Guild Wars 1, they had been relegated to near extinction and are all kind of huddled in their last bastion, which is the northern lands of Krita. Part of what had happened in Ascalon was they were driven out by the Char, who, interestingly enough, are now a different playable species, which we'll get to. But at the point of Guild Wars 1, the Char were like the evil beastmen, like the Uruk-hai and Lord of the Rings. And they since got retconned a little bit and were like, well, that was a bad faction of them. The rest of them are actually pretty chill. It's fine. But the reason that they were driven out was not because of racism. Actually, it was because of imperialism, one of the two evils of the world, because the humans actually took Ascalon from the Char. So the Char were like, fuck you, this is our ancestral homeland. We're taking it back. So humanity at the point of Guild Wars 2 is just struggling to survive, and that lives in Krita, sandwiched between the Shiver Peak Mountains and the Maguma Wastes, which are wastes. That's exactly what you think they are.
Maguma is my favorite Pink Floyd album.
Exactly. In image 3, we've got the Char, which it's a little tough to tell from this picture, but they're cat people, but they're like lion cat people. They're like they're more of like they're your orc analogs, honestly. That's what they are.
They're your
physical,
warrior tribe.
Your warrior tribe, yep.
Your Klingons, yeah.
Exactly. You may be surprised, they revere strength among all else. They eschew things like spirituality and religion and art and culture. They are just a warring tribe. Image 4 are the Norn. They are Nordic humans.
Yeah, that's just different flavor of human for sure.
It's just different human. It's not my favorite.
Big Elder Scrolls energy there.
Yeah. It is exactly just like whatever the Nords in Elder Scrolls. Like, it's just okay, you just made Viking Man. That's fine. Yeah. But they are 9 feet tall, so that's a little bit different. So that's kind of fun. The thing with the Norn are they used to live in the snowy mountains of Shiver Peak, north of the Shiver Peak Mountains, and they were driven south when the Elder Dragon of Ice and Persuasion, Jormag, was awakened. I put in my notes here, "Ayo, we got tall dwarves."
We got tall dwarves. It's kind of the wildlings in Game of Thrones too. Like,
yeah, a little wildling. They tend to be the more like resolute, not barbarian type tribe. That's your Char, but similar vibe. All right, next we got image 5, the Asura. These are your gnomes, but they're kind of like dickhead gnomes. So they look like little like rat men. They look like shit. They look really ugly. On purpose.
I think they're kind of cute.
They're like melted Zora from Zelda.
Yeah, they look. Honestly, I was thinking they look kind of like Midna from Twilight Princess.
Mm-hmm. Dobby was what I got. Dobby.
Yeah,
from Harry
in
Potter.
that image, they do look a little bit more like Midna. In the game graphics, which we'll see in a little bit, they more look like kind of like rat people.
Okay,
but they're if you want to play a spellcaster, you play an Asura, but they are more gnome coded in that they're like really big in science and technology, not necessarily just arcane. So they're not like elves. They are like tech. They're steampunk gnomes, basically. They first originally built their societies underground, so they were not a part of Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 1 says, hey, the Asura didn't exist because they were underground.
Okay.
And because of the Elder Dragon, something prophet, they were driven out from the underground and now live above ground and are here in Guild Wars 2. That's image 5. Image 6 is our last playable species. This is the Sylvari. They're plant people.
Third flavor of human. Pointy ear human, but third flavor of human.
These are your elves.
Okay.
Yeah, you're Sylvan.
They're young.
Yeah.
They're like, elves, but young.
They're Feywild elves. They're Sylvans. They grow from the magical pale tree. So the story of the Sylvari is actually kind of cool and interesting. So you've got this magical pale tree, which is like the Deku tree in Zelda. It's a magical tree. Don't ask questions. The pale tree one day just started budding people, and it was just like, oh, I make people now, dope.
Oh,
And so the whole story with the Sylvari is they've only been on Tyria for the last 25 years, so they're a very young species. Like everyone who has ever lived in the Sylvari species exists in Tyria to this day, isn't in the game, and there are like 40 of them.
Good.
I bet
Yeah.
at least one of the people, like one of the first people who sprouted from that tree, probably got juiced. Like there is at least one person that came off that somebody else was like, "What do you think the
What do you
juice
think
tastes
the
like out of
juice
those?"
of those people taste like?
They
They
didn't
came
get
from a
juiced; they
tree.
got sold into slavery. Is that anything?
That's-
I mean, I guess, but like
something.
it's less of a joke and more of an icky thing. But you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I
It
like
is
Matt's
icky.
thing better.
And Matt was talking
Matt's
about
thing is
juicing a
better.
person.
right? Yeah,
Is that better though?
I think so.
It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
Kicked in the face, punched in the face kind of situation.
It's certainly not worse.
It's different.
It's
different.
Hey,
So-
what's the next thing?
so this is where I think this is really cool. I mentioned before, Guild Wars 2 is all about personalized storytelling. And right off the bat, depending on the species you pick, you're going to get thrown into one of 5 segments that are like just kind of walled off tutorial area that's meant for your particular species. And it's some like very high spectacle. You're going to fight some baddies using just your auto attacking. The one that I did, I rolled a Sylvari and I fought a big tree monster. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
And then you're taken to your official species designated newbie zone. And from there, really until like the second half of the game, the base game of Guild Wars 2 is all about building your personal story. So much so that the actual story of Guild Wars 2 is called My Story. So
yeah.
when you
Like
roll a
Scrubs.
character, it is kind of like Scrubs, I guess. So when you roll a new character, much like if you're rolling a D&D character, you pick a lot of flavor, right? In D&D, you have a background, you have your flaws, you have whatever. In here, you'll pick your class, you'll pick your abilities and all that good stuff, but then you also answer a couple questions. And like when I rolled it, like I said, I did Sylvari, so it was like, you know, what it gave me 3 pictures and it was like, what do you dream of? And it was like a green elk that represents strength, or like the white moon that represents divinity or whatever, like that kind of thing. And there's like 3 or 4 it'll ask you about like your morals and like, you know, maybe I know with the human ones there's like something like who did you wrong in the past. Like it's letting you role play and building some of that backstory flavor for your character. Because Guild Wars 2 will develop a customized series of story quests based on all of those things that you pick. I looked at a tree, and the image is not a fun image, but basically there's like a reverse branching path where it all culminates in the final battle. Like everybody has the same final battle, but like there are a series of like mini branches that all kind of eventually meet together from that level 1 to level 80 experience. At level 1 alone, that initial starting quest has as many as 90 potential branches between your decisions on your species, your class, and all those other like customizable flavor things. So that's when I talk about like customization, that's where like Guild Wars 2 really is unique in that it really does emphasize that like you're in the game, you're the special boy with special boy powers, and you're going to build whatever you want to build, right? So if that's your thing, this might be the game for you.
All right.
So the first 30 levels, so the max level is 80. 80 is when you fight the big bad and you go to end game and then you go to raid. So we're gonna take you to the 80 levels. That's where level 80 is where the story ends. So the first 30 levels of the game and that first act of My Story are all related to your chosen species. And through that, and again, there's going to be little sub branches based on those flavor options, but really like it kind of boils down to a series of 1 to 5, a series of 1 of 5 playgrounds, essentially, until level 30. And based on your species, you're going to pair up with one of Guild Wars 2's 5 main NPC protagonists, which we're going to talk about right now. So if you pick a human, you're gonna work with Image 7 is Logan Thackeray. Logan Thackeray is our first
normal Jonathan Everyman.
He's Jonathan Human. I would like to also point out the voice cast of this game is stacked. Logan Thackeray, voiced by the one, the only, you love him, Troy Baker.
Oh,
Hey.
I was gonna guess Matt Mercer, but Troy Baker's another good answer.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess who's in here? It's Matt Mercer. Do you want?
Of course it
know?
is.
Do you want to also know who's in here? It's Nolan North's in here. He shows up. Nolan North plays about 18 characters.
Anjali
it's all the
Benjamin
hits.
Anjali.
Anjali, I don't believe is in here, but Sam Riegel is. We'll talk about him later. We also get a Jennifer Hale. I picked because the other thing is your player characters are voice acted as well, so you are not a silent protagonist, which is very cool and very unique. Many games do not do this.
Yeah.
I missed it. Did you say what Catman Clancy Brown plays?
Clancy Brown is not Catman, but I will say who is Catman. It's Steve Blum, who I've mentioned before. We talked about X-Men, who has famously been the voice of Wolverine in many games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we'll get to Catman. So Logan Thackeray is your human analog. He's your human buddy. So you're gonna work with him. He's like kind of like the head of the guard, yada yada yada. So you're gonna work with him and doing human shit. You're gonna investigate some corrupted officials. You're gonna face a ghost from your past. You're gonna do a lot of stuff that's pretty sad because the human campaign is pretty dour.
Pretty sad.
And all this is leading up to stop an assassination plot against the human queen Janna. Janna. So
say it fast and no one will know the difference.
No one will know.
Yeah.
So we talked about Catman. So Image 8 is our char hero, Ritlock Brimstone.
Are you positive Clancy Brown is not voicing this character?
Same question.
It feels like Clancy Brown should be voicing this character. It's Steve Bloom, who is basically the same.
Who is
Go
doing
and watch.
a good Clancy Brown.
I can't tell.
He's doing a Wolverine, is what he's doing.
I don't know if this character is actually 4 feet tall, but in my mind, Danny DeVito is voicing this character.
Hey, it's me,
He comes
it's
in,
Ritlock.
hey, I'm a cat man.
Yeah.
I really like that he's got like Teva sandals that go between all of his toes. I think that's fun.
Yeah, Ritlock is obviously like he is the favorite. Everyone likes Ritlock. But also Ritlock is the only one that kind of sticks around past the end of this campaign. Because they do I can't think of another. Basically, there's a lot of like, oh hey, my son or my twin brother showed up, because they couldn't get these voice actors back.
So it's do you mean like landfill and landfill?
Yeah, it's a landfill situation.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So Norn, if you pick Norn, those are the Nords, the Elder Scrolls Nords. You'll work with Air Stagalkin, who is just a really tall lady.
Yeah.
And
That's not how armor works, friends,
Nope.
developers.
Well, it is on her right leg, but only her right leg.
Right.
yeah, she kind of looks like Aloy from Horizon, but like if
Oh,
a
yeah.
man drew Aloy.
Yeah.
If a
Is
horny
that how
man
you
drew
pronounce
Aloy-
that name?
Aloy? Mhm.
I've
I
said
always thought it was
alloy this
Alloy.
whole time.
It's Aloy, yeah.
Oh well, I didn't.
Because
play
it's
the game.
it's one L.
Yeah,
Whatever.
you idiot.
Yeah, you know
how
what?
was
That's
I?
the matter with
How
me.
could I have made such an egregious mistake?
That's where my
How dare you.
disbelief has been suspended.
Yeah. Anyway, with Air, you're gonna put down a cult that worships Jormag, which is the ice dragon. It just says you have to reconcile with a past mistake, which is the wiki notes. I don't know what that means. And then
Alright.
again, related to your flavor. And then you take down some mole people. That is a species of people. I do not remember what they're called, but they're mole people. That's all you need to know.
Got it.
Cool. Asura, they're the little techie rat people. You work with Asura's hero Zoja, who is voiced by Felicia Day.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a name.
This is
That's
a
name.
Pixar character.
It is a Pixar character. That's why I said like they kind of look like shit because they all have like really big teeth.
The feet are tough to look at.
Does Code Lyoko mean anything to you
Yeah.
guys?
Code Lyoko.
Yeah,
it
okay.
Uh-huh.
does.
This is a
Uh-huh.
Code Lyoko looking motherfucker. if
It's
I've ever
Code
seen one.
Lyoko coded.
It's
I see
the,
Jack and Daxter as well here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the forehead goggles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the Code Lyoko is the gigantic 5 head on this character.
As I said, the Asurans are kind of dicks. They're all again, they're your wizards. They're egotistical scholars, right? So, of course, there's a spy organization that wants to hoard all the world's information. They're called the Inquest. You work with Zoja to take down the Inquest. And then you ultimately rescue a researcher, uncovering a pretty big piece of information in the lore that is dragons, these elder dragons, are actively consuming the world's magic.
Seems like an issue.
Which will be a problem.
Probably want to put a stop to that.
That's correct.
Big fans of the Marvel's Eternals, I guess.
Or Marvel's Eternals is a big fan of Guild Wars too. Because this is 2012. Oh, well.
I
Eternals
think
is in the
I
80s.
meant the book,
Yeah.
but whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Say
Sure.
the joke stands.
Joke stands. And then Sylvari, the plant people, are going to work with Kaith, who's their hero. Kaith is one of considered to be the first awoken. So she's in that Sylvari not born, they're awoken from a shared dream because they're kind of Legion, but kind of not. They're Plant Legion. We are Legion. We are few. We are
They're
Plant.
also kind of the Na'vi from Avatar.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm much like the Na'vi. I can't imagine that internet has been kind to these creatures, the dark, seedy versions of
No.
fan inserts. Probably not great here.
No, and more importantly, and part of that is because there's a rogue group of Sylvari called the Nightmare Court, which is led and operated by Kate's former lover. Her name is, I forget, I have it written down there. Something else, high fantasy. So, and I said before, like, you pick these ethical paths. So, like, you kind of play out, like, these story missions will, play out. So, like, what you picked, what you dreamed about. If you dreamed about the deer, you do one thing, whatever. And then this also culminates in searching for the legendary sword Khalidbolg, which is a royalty-free or public use name that we see everywhere. So you search for Khalidbolg to hunt down a lich responsible for killing one of the other firstborn Sylvari. So I mentioned these 5 heroes because these are really like this is your team, these are your buddies, this is your main cast. Most MMOs do this because, again, you can't really have a backstory for your own character. So your character, you watch and play the game. This is your Baldur's Gate 3 companion, same idea. Like, you experience the story through your player character's eyes, and the people who are actually, reacting to things and interacting with the world or these NPC characters. So these 5 characters were all part of an adventuring group called Destiny's Edge. And Destiny's Edge was founded to fight back the threat of the Elder Dragons, but has since disbanded because of some infighting. And the back half of Guild Wars 2 is all about reuniting the members of Destiny's
Gotta
Edge.
get the band back together.
Hell yeah, dude. They're on a mission from God.
Now, why do we have to get the band back together? Well, shortly before the beginning of the game, Destiny's Edge had set out to hunt the crystalline dragon Glint, who actually appears in Guild Wars 1. But again, unless you've played that, you have no idea who that is. Glint is known as the champion of the Elder Dragon Kralkatorrik, which I mentioned at the top of the episode. Every Elder Dragon has a champion. Champion is like their avatar. You get it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, upon reaching Glint, Glint was like, hey, actually, I'm cool. Glint had been freed from Kralkatorrik's control and was like, I'm good now. We got to take down Kralkatorrik. And they were like, dope. So Destiny's Edge teamed up with Glint to take out Kralkatorrik, her former master. Except right before the final encounter, they got to the last save point and said, you can't turn back. And Logan was like, actually, I got to go home.
Actually, I want to turn back now.
Yeah, Logan turned back. He did not go to the final save point. Logan got called back to Krayta to help defend Queen Jenna. Jenna? I think it's Jenna. Leaving them subsequently a man down. So Air, the big, tall Nordic woman, was like, fuck it, we're going to fight this dragon anyway. Of course, without Logan, they were outmatched. And both Glint, the dragon, and Zoja's, the little Asuran, Zoja's mentor, who was there too, they both died in battle. And everyone else barely escaped with their lives, yada, 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 blame each other for all of the deaths, including Logan, because Logan just dipped out.
I was going to say, sounds like it's Logan's fault. Logan
So-
certainly bears a brunt of the blame here.
So Clancy Brown blames Logan for leaving. Zoja actually blames Air for being like, well, we should do this anyway, because Air she's
Oh.
like, well, Air could have just called it off and didn't.
Yeah.
So, following that first half, following this, you hit level 30, you conclude the species storyline. The base game then gives you the option to choose one of 3 orders. Guilds.
Like
They're-
in the wars.
Like in the wars.
Oh.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So these orders are more like political organizations. This is like a, other games have you join a nation. This is the same idea. But these are all political organizations that are very specific to how they want to tackle events, and conveniently they all follow alongside the tropes of the fighters, the thieves, and the mages.
Oh, okay.
So you got your fighters guild, your mage guild, and your thieves guild. But instead, what they are you've got the vigil, which are your swing sword ask questions later kind of fantasy cops. With the vigil, you're paired up with a man named Warmaster Kurdson. He doesn't matter because he's gonna die. And together with Warmaster Kurdson, you play bodyguard for like a human char peace treaty signing. Cool. The Durman Priory, your wizards guild, your mages guild, but instead they're like science and tech, but also arcane. They want to just acquire as much information as they can. So they send you out with a character named Magister Siren. Doesn't matter. He's going to die. The 2 of you recover an ancient dwarven artifact. Also, dwarves are in this world, but they're extinct. That will not be important later.
Okay.
And then finally, we've got the Order of Whispers. Say it with me. The Thieves Guild.
Thieves.
Yeah.
And they task you along with Tybalt Leftpaw. Don't worry about him. He'll die later. He doesn't matter. You have to find a missing woman and do other Thieves Guild stuff. Cool. Great.
I want to jump in and just say the character names so far have been immaculate.
Yeah, they really
Tybalt
have.
Left Paw.
What species do you guys think Tybalt Leftpaw is? I'll give you one guess.
I feel like he's the cat man.
He's a char.
Yep,
Yeah,
he's a char.
Tybalt Left Paw, Logan Thackeray, Right Lock Brimstone, just
Yeah.
A+ character names.
Tybalt Leftpaw is right out of Cats.
Yeah. It's
Like,
sure
like
is.
Belongs-
Rum Tum Tugger's
belongs
best
with-
friend is
with-
Tybalt Leftpaw.
With
Yeah, he
Skimble
kinda is.
Shanks and
Yeah,
Rum Tum Tugger.
Scrimbleshanks.
It's really it's real. So you gain rank, you gain experience, you gain levels with your chosen order. You go on more and more missions. Throughout all of this, the threat of the Elder Dragons becomes very real, as it's discovered that Zaitan, who is the Elder Dragon of Shadow and Death, is targeting the capital city of Lion's Arch. Now, by this point, every species has their own capital city, much like any other MMO, and there's one shared capital where the back half of the game takes place. This is really like your home base. That's Lion's Arch. So that's where the predominantly the majority of the game takes place. Together with your particular order, you set out to launch a defense at the nearby Claw Island. And image 12 is of Zaitan. So this is our first big Elder Dragon we got to take down.
He's a bone dragon.
He's a bone dragon. He's a big necro dragon
yeah.
because he's the dragon of death, which is
Yeah,
like
that's
very
cool.
cool.
Very cool.
Remember how I said there's that island that was called the Ruins of Or that people used to live on? So the Ruins of Or was another human society that was invaded by the Char in Guild Wars 1. Instead of fighting back against the Char, they decided to just sink the island.
Sure.
All right.
Hey, that's pretty
Hey.
much the plot of the second Aquaman movie, a movie that no one but me has seen, but that's the
I
case.
think no, that's
You and I both saw that.
I
Matt.
saw.
did we
I
go
saw
together?
Black Panther
Okay.
2. That's different.
It is different. It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Zaitan, as the Dragon of Death, raises Or, the Ruins of Or, from the ocean, and basically just creates his own like island of zombies, which is fun.
I mean,
That's
it's kinda
exactly Aquaman 2.
rad. Yeah. This is. I'm seeing it now.
Cool. So I should also mention, up until this point, much like the species story, based on your order, based on who you pick, you can choose different. There's a lot of different choices that lead into what missions you do. It's inconsequential to talk about right now, but it is very cool flavor. Anyway, So the end of Act 2 is you're at Claw Island. You and your order are fighting back against Zhaitan, or you're setting up to fight back against Zhaitan and Zhaitan's champion. Remember, every Elder Dragon has a champion. But the threat is too big. You're forced to retreat. Your mentor NPC, which I mentioned earlier, makes a heroic sacrifice, TM, and you escape with your life. So any of those mentors that you're with on your chosen order will die. Spoiler alert. There's a lot of death flags. It's fine. So following that defeat, you then work to unite the 3 orders to create the Pact, which this is like your lead government, your United Nations moving forward. And this will be the shared alliance originally designed to fight against Zhaitan, but will ultimately fight against the rest of the Elder Dragon threat. And that's really like Act 3 is reuniting the orders, creating the Pact, and then reuniting the Organization of Destiny's Edge, which, because again, we can't kill the dragon without the dragon killers. We need the dragon killers.
I really like that it's you unite the 3 guilds before you get 5 old friends back together.
Yeah. Look, I don't know the ins and outs of this. It could very well happen at different points in the game. I have no fucking idea. I did not spend 100 hours playing through the base game of Guild Wars 2. So who knows what order it is. The wiki didn't tell me.
Okay.
But that's a fair point.
This makes it sound like you unite the 3 guilds and then
get 5 friends to hang out.
Have an easier time of doing that than getting 5 friends to take down an existential world threat.
Yeah. Maybe it happens together. I frankly have no idea, but that is the last piece of the puzzle. So I'm not going to go into each of the missions. Just know that like you do a personal quest with each one of the 5 Destiny's Edge people. They're pretty cool. They're all based on their backstory. Like
it's Mass Effect 2.
It is kind of Mass Effect 2, yeah. So with Kaith, for example, you go and take down the Nightmare Court, which I mentioned is run by her ex-lover, which is like it's her personal quest. So it's cool, whatever. Now, with the United Destiny's Edge and the full force of the Pact behind you, you as commander of the Pact take the fight to Zhaitan on the lost kingdom of Or, the floating city of Or, and in one final climactic fight, take him down for good. And that's the end of Guild Wars 2 base game. So now it's time to go raid. Hooray!
Yay!
Good.
Yeah. So we're not going to go raid. We're going to be Johnny MSQ, and we're only going to play the story, which is the best way to play an MMORPG, in my opinion. So we're going to come back 6 months later and log in and come back to A Living World Season 1. So with Zhaitan slain, the members of Destiny's Edge welcome you, the player character, as the newest member of their heroic guild to help protect the world from the remaining 4 Elder Dragons. And where Season 1 of Living World picks up is a lot of, frankly, just like filler arc stuff, a lot of like go to this place, investigate this thing, canned episodes, because again, this was originally meant to be this like quick hit bi-weekly filler, and they couldn't afford to get Troy Baker and Felicia Day to just come in every other week, right?
Sure.
So instead of our A team, we get introduced to some new NPC friends to serve as not Destiny's Edge, but like a good group of dudes. So the most important of these is Brom Erson, who is voiced by Critical Role Sam Riegel.
Okay.
Riegel. That's Image 13. So he's Air's son, if you couldn't tell from Airson.
Oh, good.
Yep. So Brom actually becomes a major character because, spoiler, Air is not going to live much longer. And this is kind of the first of like, these guys start to replace the actual Destiny's Edge people, because we
got the cheaper voice actors on
we got
Retainer.
the cheaper voice actors on Retainer.
And yes, the Young Avengers.
We can't really afford Felicia Day in every game, so it's fine. So season 1 begins with you investigating a series of uprisings from known rogue groups. I mentioned the mole people. The thing about the Char is the way that they retcon the Char is they said, hey, the Char are actually like different tribes. And 3 of the 4 tribes are like pretty chill. But the 4th tribe, the Flame Legion, they're bad. And the Flame Legion is a bad influence on the other Char. So we got to put down the Flame Legion. So that's like the bad Char. So they show up, the Sylvari Nightmare Court show up, right? Every species has their like renegade rogue group. But somehow these groups seem much more galvanized in their approach now. And it's eventually revealed that there's a mysterious benefactor behind all of this, rallying them together, providing tech. Her name, this is a renegade Sylvari calling herself Scarlet Briar. Now, Scarlet's motives are unclear at first. We later learn that she's super smart. She's wicked smart. She left the tree she's wicked
Is she
smart.
from Boston?
So now she is Sylvari, but she was one of the few that left the Grove, which is the Sylvari tree / major city. She left the Grove at a very young age to go study magic with the dickheads, the dickhead Asurin, in their capital, Radasum, which is a big floating pyramid. Very cool. Now, from those years and years of study, she discovered ley lines, which if you've ever participated in any fantasy trope, you know that ley lines are secret magical veins that live underground. They always are. That's what ley lines are.
That's
Sure.
I think
It's
the
the same thing. It's the thing that Lizzie McGuire's dad looked for in Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire.
Yep.
Son of a bitch, he's right.
Yeah, I am out of line, but I'm right.
That's a reference to our Patreon show, Deconstructed. Go to Debate This Cast or patreon.com/debatethiscast to subscribe.
Kyle did that whole plug with his hands on his face,
He did.
angry about the connection that's been made by Andrew.
I think everybody knew it when they heard it.
I was mad.
So-
I had to do the plug.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have to, but I love that you did.
I couldn't help it.
So Scarlet leads an assault on Lion's Arch, which we defend alongside Braum and the other Destiny's Edge JV members. They are, among them, Rox Whetstone, Casimir Mead, Marjorie Delacroix, and Timey. And those are fantasy names.
All A+ fantasy name. Cool.
Yep.
Rox Whetstone is really special.
Whetstone is
Yep.
real good.
Yeah.
Marjorie Delacroix, I feel like, is going to
Also
go
very good.
underappreciated,
She's
and that's
fancy.
also very good.
Is it Delacqua?
That's Delacroix.
No.
Well, at least the YouTube video I watched said it pronounced
Because
it
that would be
Delacroix.
of water.
I think it's Delacroix. Maybe
It
it's
can be whatever we want. It's fine.
How about this? This is good for a visual medium. There.
Delacroix of Croy.
Of Croy. Marjorie of Croy. Now,
Of the Croy.
all right, so we defend Lion's Arch successfully. The day is saved. Yay! But Scarlet's true goal is achieved as her massive machine rewrites the ley lines to follow all the way back to the jungle, awakening the next Elder Dragon threat, who is Mordremoth, the dragon of plant and mind. And that's
Yeah,
image 14.
this is more horrifying than the skeleton dragon.
This guy looks
Yeah.
sick.
He's
Yeah.
cool. Mordremoth is a psychic plant dragon.
I love him.
I think he's my favorite of the Elder Dragons because he is actually the entire forest.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is
Yeah.
just a big, like, kind of an eldritch horror vine monster. Like he's not like a dragon-ass dragon like the other ones are. The end game fight with him though is you have to go into his mind and fight his mind avatar, which is just a kind of a big fat dude.
Oh,
You Persona 5'd him?
Kinda.
Oh my
Dragon?
goodness.
I don't have it in here, but like if you want to go look up like Mordremoth fight, you'll just see like kind of like a big fat bipedal dragon. It's very weird.
Dragon of Plant and Mind also sounds like a weed euphemism.
It does,
Little bit.
yeah.
A little bit. That's why I gave that to Matt. So Lion's Arch is rebuilding from the damage of the Battle of Scarlet. During this time, we hunt down an egg sired by none other than Glint, who is that crystalline dragon that died. That is the good dragon. Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, people are super racist towards Sylvari because, again, there's like 50 of them, and one of them turned out to be a terrorist because Scarlet Briar was a terrorist who unleashed a vine monster on the rest of the world from the. So people are like, "Hey, what's the deal with these Sylvari?"
Is there like a Sylvari slur in the game? Did they come up with a slur for Sylvari
I'm
that
not
feels
sure.
like a very
Like
2012
leaf
thing?
finger,
It's again, it's
which is
certainly
just
possible.
salad fingers but different.
I did not play 150 hours of Guild Wars 2 to be able to confidently answer that question, so it is certainly possible.
Probably call them
Okay.
sylphs.
Let's
That-
not think of slurs.
No, that's better.
probably
Yeah, we don't
a bad
need to make-
exercise.
We don't need to make
This
them
is
up.
a game no one wins.
So in between leads on the egg, we also at one point, because again, remember these are episodic. We accompany Ritlock on a quest to dispel a magical seal. In the process, he accidentally opens a portal to hell, and his sword drops in, so he jumps in after it. This will be important later, but like we can forget that for now. We finally find the egg, but in a surprise moment, Kaith shows up. She swoops in and grabs it and ducks out, and we're like, "Hey, Kaith, what the fuck? You're on our side." She's like, "Peace, dorks." So we visit the Magical Pale Tree. Magical Pale Tree is like, "I've got all the information, but I'm not going to tell you. Instead, you're going to eat these seeds, and you're going to see visions of Kaith's memories."
Cool. You're gonna do desert drugs.
You're going to do desert
Yeah.
drugs in the forest. So through these visions, we learn more about her history with Fowlin, who is the leader of the Nightmare Court. I could not remember that name. We also learn of a new third Sylvari named Wynn, who doesn't matter but is part of this. So basically, Wynn learned of this like terrible secret about the Sylvari species. Fowlin, who most people already knew was like kind of gonna rebel, but was still like hanging on with Kaith. Fowlin was pressing Wynn for the information, and Wynn was like, absolutely not. Now, Kaith and Fowlin were lovers, and everybody knew that, but Kaith was also very much known as the level-headed one, the responsible one. So Wynn entrusted the secret to Kaith alone and made her promise to kill her so that Wynn would never like reveal the information. So Kaith did that. Kaith is like a thief, that's her thing, so like this isn't that unbelievable, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
She's the one where you're always like questioning her motives and her allegiance.
Yeah.
So she did all that. She kept the secret from Fowlin, which ultimately drove them apart and drove Fowlin to the bad Sylvari. Now the secret is that the Sylvari were not actually magical tree people. Rather, they were actually built, or like not built, but designed by Mordramoth and birthed to be sleeper agents of Mordramoth. And
Oh.
It straight
Yeah.
up is the Eternals.
It straight up is the Eternals. And by tapping into the magical void for as long as she had, Scarlet had become controlled by Mordramoth to do his bidding, which is why she attacked Lion's Arch and basically like awakened him. So the end of the pre-expansion, post-expansion patches leave us with the Pact leading this aerial assault against the forest and getting like repelled by these massive whipping vines, slicing airships in two. Meanwhile, we start to see several Sylvari start to turn and get mesmerized, sleeper agent. They get Winter Soldiered under Mordramoth's control. So that leads us into the first expansion, Heart of Thorns.
It's really bad when your like racist allegory ends with they were designed by the evil dragon to all be terrorists. That's not good.
Yeah. So now we got to save the Sylvari. So Heart of Thorns begins with an explosive battle where Ritlock shows up because we can afford Steve Bloom for the expansion. Ritlock shows up, but he's got a bandana over his eyes and he's got a new class change because there was a new class to advertise. MMOs are fun, you guys. Air also shows back up. We haven't seen Air since her son came. She's not going to be there long because she gets impaled by a big old beast made out of thorns right in front of Braum. Oops. So Air's dead.
And she was just far enough away. We didn't get any voice acting from her. It was really just all.
This is kind of like, ooh.
I was thinking that's just enough screen time that like if she recorded her lines in her home studio for less, that's
they
fine
got her on
too.
the phone.
It's not an off-screen death, but I think it's enough voice to like they either used what was archived or like here's what we got on the Zoom call.
Used what was archived was what I thought for
Mm-hmm.
the gnome's appearance, or for Kate's earlier appearance, was just like
Keith shows up a lot. She's a pretty
Yeah.
major character up until the end of this expansion, and then she kind of dips out. Zoja just like doesn't show back up. I can't find anywhere where Zoja shows up. As well as Logan kind of doesn't appear again either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what are you gonna do? So
That's better than how Destiny handled Peter Dinklage getting priced out of the expansions, which was replacing him in the main game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, Destiny. You
Oh,
silly
Destiny.
bitch. We'll do a Destiny flavor text one day.
One of these
That'll
days.
be a day.
Yeah.
So we catch up to Kaith, who we're still like, are you good? Are you bad? Are you on your side? Are you not? Kaith has Glint's egg. We take it from her after a Vine Beast attacks. Also, in that battle with Air, a Vine Beast stabs Fowlin, the bad Sylvari, and now this Vine Beast like has Fowlin's face because it's absorbed Fowlin into the Vine Beast. It's
Cool.
terrifying, and I don't have an image of it,
yeah,
but it's terrifying.
That's not horrifying at all.
So that fight happens. We take the egg from Kaith and we leave, and we take it to this hidden magical city to be incubated. That doesn't matter. It's filler. But it's in this magical city so that it can hatch. Great. That's all you need to know. Later, we investigate an old research facility and learn that every Elder Dragon has a certain weakness. We don't yet know what that weakness is, but they all have their own special weakness. This is where we find Zoja and Logan, because they're there and they needed to come back for the expansion. So they do show up a little bit here, and we can afford voice talent once again. So they're kind of hanging around till the end of Heart of Thorns. We find Kaith once more, who says like, no, I'm cool. I'm on your side. So then we fight this Fowlin Vine Beast hybrid. I said Vince Beast in my notes. I must have been losing my mind. Also, yikes. Remember that failed aerial assault on the forest? Well, the guy leading that assault somehow fell from an airship and got absorbed into the vines, into the Eldritch Vine monster. And now he lives in a vine as a kind of sentient vine zombie.
Oh, well, that's fun.
That's
Vine-
something.
Vine was a really popular social media at this time.
Right around
This is like
time,
2015, yeah.
Yeah.
So Vine Zombie tells us that, hey, Morgermoth is basically invincible because he is the forest. But heads up, not only is he the dragon of plant, he's the dragon of mind. So you can do an Inception and fight him in his brain space and do a kind of what did you call it before?
Persona 5.
It's a Persona 5.
You're going to his mind palace.
Yeah, we're going to the mind palace. So, because there's
Have you
something,
played Persona
something,
5, Andrew? I think you'd really like
never
it.
heard of it. I'll play it after I watch Mandalorian. So, I mentioned like the shared dream, the Sylvari. This is that similar like dream logic. Like, yeah, we enter the dream. Who cares? So we fight Morgermoth's kind of dad bod brain avatar, and we return to the physical realm where the guy, the vine zombie, his name is Traherne. Traherne tells us like, hey, you got to kill me because I'm the last link to Morgermoth's power. So we do that because we're the hero of the story, and the Elder Dragon explodes in magic and energy, and that magic and energy echoes across the wastelands, echoes across Tyria, and makes it all the way to Glint's egg, and it is absorbed by the little egg as the dragon egg starts to hatch.
Ooh.
So that's the end of Heart of Thorns. Following the death of Morgermoth, we hold a formal funeral. We hold a formal funeral for Air because Air died, and on the heels of that funeral, formed the Dragon's Watch, which is our new Destiny's Edge.
Cool.
Good.
So
Sure.
image 15 is our Dragon's Watch. So this becomes our main cast of characters from here on out. One of these two is Marjorie Delacroix.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I don't know which one it is. I'm so sorry.
Good.
That's fine. There wasn't a lot that I found about these characters. It was literally like they exist.
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
They're just kind of there. I know that they get more characterization as the game goes on, but we're not going to get there. So
What year did you say this was? I'm so sorry.
this is 14 or 15, I think.
Yeah, so like right around the second Avengers movie when everybody needed an Avengers.
Everybody needed an Avengers. Everybody needed a Gatewatch.
Everyone was doing an Avengers and a Gatewatch. Yep.
Yep. So the newly formed Dragon's Watch gets pulled into the next crisis, literally, as a massive explosion goes off. So this is the post-patch or post-expansion patches. A massive explosion goes off while our group is in an airship, and while we try to fly away, the explosion reverses itself and sucks everything in like a singularity.
Uh-oh.
This is because of ancient magic called Bloodstone magic, which is an ancient magical energy built to counteract dragons. This will be important later. We're not going to get to it today. So there, in the center of the explosion, we find a site of a ritual where some super racist humans, remember I said every species has a bad version, the White Mantle are the bad humans. The White Mantle are channeling some crazy levels of Bloodstone magic into something. That something appears to be a Mersat, which is this ancient kind of godlike race. Again, ancient alien. This is your ancient alien. We need an ancient alien. We got an ancient alien. The Mersat is actually
an ancient alien.
You kind of need an ancient alien if we're going to go this far in a fantasy storyline. I'm just saying. That is
fair.
personal
That's
opinion.
fair.
So the Mersat actually are a thing in Guild Wars 1. So this is them bringing Mersat back. This particular Mersat introduces himself as Lazarus and disappears with the rest of the White Mantle. Dope. Meanwhile, we learned that not only one, but two more Elder Dragons have awoken. We've got Primordus, the dragon of fire and destruction, and Jormag, the dragon of ice and persuasion. Ah, dang.
We're doing a fire and ice thing.
Yep, we're doing a fire and ice thing.
Twin Rova situation.
So 16 and 17 are our fire and ice dragons.
Mordremoth looks so much better than all the other dragons.
Mordremoth is really good. Mordremoth is definitely the best of all of these. These are cool. They're more just like, they're just dragon-ass dragons. Primordius lives in a volcano. Jormag lives in a glacier. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Sure. Fire and ice dragons.
Fire and ice dragons. Now this will be a problem, but we also learned that Glint's egg is hatching, which is fun, and that takes priority. Lazarus is also like, hey, I'm on your side. I'm gonna save this dragon. And we're like, cool piece. So we entrust Kaith. So Kaith is around, and we say, Kaith, don't talk because we can't afford to, but stand guard and protect this dragon hatchling, who we collectively name Aurene. And Aurene's our new dragon friend, Image 18.
Oh, Aurene's adorable.
Yeah, there's the merch.
Yeah, Aurene was designed in a lab to sell toys.
She sure was, Matt. So we do some more investigation. We find that the weakness of Primordus and Jormag are surprise each other because fire and ice. So after we hunt down and kill the leader of the White Mantle, we learn more about this whole Mersat thing. There were actually two splinter factions within them, both of whom tried to resurrect this Mersat in their own way. Also, in a very silly turn of events, both groups had sabotaged the other. So
perfect.
The result was that resurrection never happened. So we're like, cool. Well, who is this Mersat?
Then who is this guy then?
Yeah. Turns out this Mersat isn't a Mersat at all. Rather, it's the god of war, Balthazar.
Oops.
Hold on.
Excuse me?
Yeah. So remember back when we talked about Abaddon, and I said there are six human gods. They don't matter. Well, they matter now.
Good.
So
okay.
This is literally like in the notes. Like, sorry, what was that? Human gods? Yeah. There are 6 human gods that were introduced in Guild Wars 1 that was very much like, don't worry about it. Balthazar is the god of war, the human god of war. Balthazar's whole thing is after the fall of Abaddon, these gods kind of went away, and that was the whole thing with the humans is even their gods have left them, right? Like they were abandoned by their own faith. The gods didn't leave, but were just kind of arguing over what to do about the Elder Dragon threat, essentially. So Balthazar wanted to fight the Elder Dragons, but the rest of the gods were like, no, you dummy. When an Elder Dragon explodes, it loses all of the magic it was hoarding. Ergo, if we kill all these Elder Dragons, Tyria will explode. So Balthazar is like, that's cool with me. I'm the god of war. That's kind of my thing.
I want that.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, say less. So Taimi, who is our new Zoja, tells us that, like, hey, this is then again exposition. So we've destroyed 2 dragons already. We probably shouldn't destroy more because it will probably destabilize the world. Fair.
Yeah.
So now the task is, well, we don't want to kill the Elder Dragons. Actually, we just need to stop other people from killing the Elder Dragons.
Oh, God.
So we chase Balthazar to the base of the volcano, where he is basically like, he has set himself up. He has led Jormag down to the volcano, and he has set himself up to have them like firing shots at each other. So there's just like ice. It's a real Twin Rova situation with Balthazar in the middle, channeling both of the energy.
This is just Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire.
It's kind of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Yeah. It's Kyogre and Groudon fighting. Yeah.
Yeah, that was gonna say, play just like that Pokemon game.
So much like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, we
that one that I played. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
That one you totally played, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Much like Gen 3 of Pokemon, we swoop in to fight off Balthazar / Team Red and Team Ruby and Team Sapphire.
Team Aqua and Magma.
Yeah, thank you. Once weakened enough, Balthazar dips out and the Elder Dragons recede into the earth to recover their power. And we learned from an ancient artifact later that Balthazar is now setting off to hunt down Kralkatorrik, Elder Dragon of Crystal and Fury. And so our task becomes clear. We got to stop Balthazar from killing Kralkatorrik. And that is where we're going to end, because there's a lot more of Guild Wars 2 left that we're not going to cover. I'm just going to do a couple quick points here, because like I said, there are 3 more expansions. There's a lot more of this game. So if you like this, if you're listening, there's a ton more of Guild Wars 2 to explore. I will note that Path of Fire is considered to be the best, like the most favorite expansion. So just real quick, the hot hits of Path of Fire are, you have you're hunting down Balthazar through the Crystal Desert, which is that kind of southern region. Balthazar's death, of course, leads to Kralkatorrik's awakening. Beans. Post-expansion patches, we are chasing down Kralkatorrik, as well as squaring off against a megalomaniacal lich, which is very fun. The latter half of Path of Fire's story patches were called the Icebrood Saga, and this was a completely separate story that focused on the geopolitics of the Char. It's also like a really interesting story featuring Retlock's estranged son, Ryland. So we get a lot more. This is where we start getting the like these character stories. So we get a lot about like this Char Splinter Cell group led by Ritlock's son. It's very good. In 2019, yeah, sorry, I have this written wrong. I believe it was 2018, 2019, ArenaNet released End of Dragons, which was the official conclusion of the Elder Dragon saga. That takes place in the until now isolated nation of Kantha, which is a separate continent that's in that map, but it's shown separately. And in Kantha, we encounter the 6th and final Elder Dragon, Su-1, who begins as actually a force for control. So Su-1 is actually like, hey, I'm chill. Also, the dragon of water. But then Su-1 is controlled or put under corrupted, and we got to fight them. So all the Elder Dragons are dead as of the end of End of Dragons. Aurene becomes a fully grown dragon and replaces them as like the Elder Dragon Prime. Cool.
As one does.
And sorry, that was in 2022.
Our little mini dragon all grew up.
Yep. Aurene all grew up. And then with the threat of the Elder Dragons gone, a new menace appears in the form of demons. So 2023's Secrets of the Obscure deals with that new threat. And then like I said, we have one more coming out called Janthier Wilds, which I don't really know. I haven't seen anything about this. They've been pretty tight-lipped. I will also note that as of 2024, the player base of Guild Wars 2 has significantly gone down. So I'm guessing I have not seen nearly anything about last year's expansion or this year's expansion. I'm guessing Secrets of the Obscure probably wasn't very popular, and nearly as popular as Path of Fire and End of Dragons. So Guild Wars 2 might be on an upswing. Hard to say. We'll see when Janther Wilds comes back next month. But that's going to do it.
I missed it. How many active players did you say it has?
Right now, it's in the tens of thousands, but
Okay.
At the peak was like 500,000 active users or concurrent players at one time.
I was just curious.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like, I looked, there's a site that tracks like MMO population, and it's like, I think it's like maybe like 10,000, something like that. Concurrent, like, people logged in at one time. So that, my friends, is Guild Wars 2. There's a lot more. Look, here's the thing, right? We talked a lot about MMOs today. I will say like, I'm not gonna go play Guild Wars 2. I'm not. Because I already play one of these. I already play Final Fantasy 14, and for the same reason why WoW Killers never became WoW Killers, I've sunk 2,000 hours into a game that I've been playing for 10 years. I'm not gonna start something new. I'm just not. That is effectively more or less the same thing. Now, all of these things, very good things. This is a great game. When I was playing it, I was like, yeah, I get it. I could definitely get into this. I'm not going to commit to 2 of these, and I'm not going to start a new one. So I can say objectively, this is really cool, and it's a fun game to play. It's not for me. It's for someone else who's...
You're 12 years behind at this point.
Yeah, 12 years too late.
This is not the time to start Guild Wars 2.
Mm-hmm.
No, but hey, if you are looking for an MMO, if you're interested in these kind of games, this is, I would argue, one of the better ones to pick up. It is not gated behind 500 hours of content like Final Fantasy 14 is. It's not full of toxic people like World of Warcraft is. It's pretty fun to play. It's pretty breezy, and it really doesn't focus on end game grinding and raiding and all of those things. Like, it's really just focused on role playing and building a story and building a world. So it is the closest thing that you have to a multiplayer Baldur's Gate, I would say. So that's my ending thoughts.
I mean, I kind of like the story.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I like the story, and on a non-story note, I love the thought of game successful can't afford voice actors anymore. Downgrade to different voice actors.
Let's bring in their distant cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're Waluigi's.
It's very funny because I couldn't help but compare this to FF14 as I was writing this, and FF14 had the opposite problem. When they launched Realm Reborn, they had zero money because they were at a very bad game that lost a lot of money. So they got really kind of like cut rate budget voice acting. And then when Heavensward came out, critically acclaimed Heavensward, they upgraded. And the Heavensward characters and voices became the norm. And it's funny that like in this one they were almost like they kind of swapped in the B team, and that became their main characters. I found that it's interesting how these things kind of evolve over time. I will also say those post expansion patches, they stopped being bi-weekly content after season 1 and did the more like traditional path, which is like it's just part of the main story. So you just go through it.
Sure.
You can go through it at any point. They've since released that season 1 content because for a long time that season 1 content was unplayable. You couldn't play it if you didn't play it when it came out. So for like 8 years, it was completely like just it didn't exist. So they actually in 22 with End of Dragons re-released that content as like a hey, this is content that most of you have never played before. So here you go. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
good.
I said it off recording, but I'll say it again on recording that I think one of the most glaring areas of the age gap between myself and you guys is like I missed the MMO wave. And hearing you talk about this not only the story, but like also the gameplay and just in general really makes me feel like if I was 5, 6, 7 years older, I would have been the whole fucking way into this.
You would have been the whole way into this.
Yeah.
I do think so. I think Overwatch is in the part of the reason why we don't see MMORPGs really getting created anymore, save for like one. I think there was that one that Amazon created, the late released a couple years ago. But like that's it. The reason we don't see these games anymore is just because they've evolved into always online games and games as a service.
Games as a service, yeah.
Yeah. So Destiny, Overwatch, even
Fallout
like
76.
yeah, Fallout 76.
Man, we made it 2 hours without saying Fallout 76, didn't we, Matt? We sure did, didn't we, Matt?
Even like Helldivers 2 to an extent,
Yeah,
right?
man.
Like that kind of that model where you're ranking up and you're unlocking loadouts. Like it's the same. It's all the same thing. So I think these games inspired a lot of other games that are more respectful of your time, right? But there's nothing wrong. I mean, again, like I've been playing one of these games for 10 years and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So it is for a very particular type of person. I do subscribe to that theory. And there is one of these, if you're interested in MMOs at all, there is one for everybody. There are enough that there is something for everybody that is interested in doing it. So, yeah. Any last thoughts, parting wisdom before we break? Cool.
I'll say a similar comment to Matt's, where if I had a gaming PC in 2012, I would have ridden
Another
on
major
this ship.
obstacle.
Yeah.
Another major obstacle. Well, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening in to Debate This. As always, follow along with the arguments on Threads, Facebook.
Well, I mean, we are on Threads. That's true. Yeah, Facebook also.
And X, the everything app.
It's where everything is happening.
Really, it's
where everything's happening.
Instagram's the most active one. If you want
And
to follow us
Instagram.
anywhere.
Most importantly, Instagram. Also on our website, debatethiscast.com. And most importantly, if you yourself want to commission your own flavor text, go ahead and head on over to patreon.com/debatethiscast. A one-time payment of $60 will allow you to dictate whatever series, media, game, show, religious doctrine we talk about next. Until next time, I'm Andrew Henderson.
I'm Todd. Just almost made it through an MMORPG episode without having to open the old wound of Fallout 76. Thomas.
I'm Matt. My uncle from Pittsburgh is really into 70s Euro dance pop. I call him Abaddon. Cole.
And I'm Kyle. I like Hello Kitty Island Adventure a lot more than this stuff. Harp.
We're saying thanks for debating with us. If you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.
Dude, I'd party with Abaddon.
Yeah, that's good.